On Wednesday, March 31st, a fire broke out in an industrial area near Grandview Avenue in Mariners Harbor, Staten Island. The black plume of smoke was visible across the North Shore. Expanding into a five-alarm blaze, firefighters from across the island joined local bravists to quell the fire. Burning was a warehouse hosting a variety of concerns. A significant issue was the storage of assorted automotive supplies, fuel and lubricating oils, as well as brake fluid, coolant, and transmission oils. As the fire department poured water on the building to control the outbreak, ruptured containers spilled their contents onto surrounding streets. Fidney applied booms and hay bales to try and prevent these materials from entering the nearby storm sewage drainage, but they were unable to control the runoff. The sewer grates that drain the end of Grandview Avenue lead to the railroad cut servicing the long disused North Shore rail line. This toxic material flowed into the local natural drainage, headed eventually to the Kilvan Cull or the Arthur Kill, familiar recipients of this, the latest in a long history of unnatural disasters. However, on its way to the sea, this cocktail of hideous materials traveled along the railway right-of-way and flowed into a culvert, leading to the already contaminated Mariners Marsh Park. Mariners Marsh is a city property acquired in the late 90s to be converted into a nature park. Crisscrossed by trails and ponds, Mariners Marsh is a post-industrial site that is returned to nature. Home to a steelmaker with a blast furnace, manufacturers, and shipbuilding industries, the marsh has natural and man-made ponds used for cooling and waste disposal during its long industrial past. Activity at the site slowed after the First World War. The soil along the entire area is known to be contaminated with heavy metals such as arsenic, mercury, cadmium, and lead. Hydrocarbons from petroleum products, as well as coal tar residues, lace the entire park with waste. Remediation and restoration activities have progressed over the past 10 to 20 years, and the park has been the recipient of focus groups seeking a new vision for the park. Although open for hiking and birdwatching, a wider mission has been seen as imminent. In spite of its industrial past, the park is filled with life. Foraging tours teach participants how to find green items for salads and teas. There is edible fungus and berries. Wildlife abounds. Deer visit the park regularly. Squirrels, rabbits, groundhogs, and a variety of birds are regularly seen. Lately, foxes have been sighted, certainly benefiting from the flourishing rodent population. In the past, beavers inhabited the park, trees gnawed to a point, dotting the terrain along the streams running through the area. Most of the ponds, in spite of cars, tires, and bicycles tossed in them, sported a variety of fish species. In 3 of the ponds, all the fish are now gone. Floating bellies up, hundreds of fish dotted the shore as the oily sheen rimmed the ponds. Birds and turtles feasted on the unexpected buffet, which certainly attracted rats and the recently seen foxes. Initial calls to 311 drew little response. As calls were then sent to local parks and DEC officials, a rapid, massive response was initiated. Bill Morris is a longtime presence in Mariners Marsh Park. He has served as the president of the Marsh Conservancy and is seen daily behind a wheelbarrow, clearing debris or hauling wood chips to reinforce trails that wind between the trees. The patron saint of Mariners Marsh, Bill has worked tirelessly, longer than anyone can remember, pushing elected officials, directing volunteers, and assisting Parks Department employees in rehabilitating the site. The place is a remarkable pastoral experience. In between rusted ore buckets, piles of iron slag, and tumbled-down concrete foundations, beautiful scenes of ponds and wildlife reward and refresh the visitor to this oasis in the middle of tumbled-down houses, junkyards, and illegal dumping sites. Funded initially by insurance money, Miller Environmental is leading an aggressive, professional response to the oily incursion. The first step is mitigation, attempting to minimize damage as oil continues to flow into the marsh. The company's workers cut a new channel to funnel the volatile runoff to a specific pond where they are employing booms and skimmers to remove the oil. At the origin site, the presence of asbestos in the warehouse prevents stabilization of leaking containers. Asbestos abatement procedures must precede cleanup. Meanwhile, workers are spending 12-hour days, 7 days a week, in full hazmat suits dealing with the waste. Hay bales are so last century, as workers spread the creeks with mats called sweep to soak up the oil. Unlike previous versions of absorbent, sweep are hydrophobic and repel water as they absorb oil and other fluids in this witch's brew of toxic contaminants. Brightly colored cheerleader pom-poms seem strangely out of place in this scene of death and disaster. These clusters of long, thin, colorful ribbon, like activated charcoal, provide an abundance of surface area for oil to cling to as they bob in the water, attached to floating containment booms. The oil coating the pom-pom strands can then be removed and recycled, or the devices can be placed into secure, lined landfills. Following mitigation, the next step will be remediation, where oil-soaked soils are removed and pools of oil are eliminated. In Alaska, oil still seeps from the ground, forming rainbows along the shore, where the petroleum from the Exxon Valdez grounding provoked scenes of oily shorebirds, dead seals, and dolphins. The final step, restoration, appears to be a far-off dream, and questions of resources and funding hide in the distance below the horizon. It will remain an open question for quite some time when, or even if, fish can be restored to the ponds. While the government response has been rapid and professional, and the environmental relief has been aggressive, this has been an environmental tragedy for a site that seemed filled with promise and seemingly poised to welcome an adoring public. This event has been progressing with little or no public notice, and the environmental communicators will continue to monitor the situation, communicating with Parks Department officials, the state DEC, and managers from Miller Environmental.